This just in, South African pesticide deaths.
2 miners were found dead after drinking pesticide-contaminated water.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Janae Reynolds.
And I'm Katie Principato.
And we're here to inform you about pesticides. In case you didn't know, in 1986, the Food and Agriculture Organization defined the term pesticide as any substance or mixture of substances intended for preventing, destroying, or repelling any pests. This basically means they're mostly chemicals used to control pests, weeds, and plant diseases. The term pesticide covers a wide range of compounds, including insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, nematicides, plant growth regulators, and others. They pose some benefits for agricultural production. However, there are environmental issues because there are a number of risks and problems that come along with the use of pesticides. For example, potential toxicity to humans, animals, and negative impacts on the overall environment. Pesticides have been used in agriculture as vector control agents in public health programs, which are basically community agencies that manage public health pests in forestry and in livestock production. Now I'm going to pass you along to Katie, who's going to inform you all about who's involved in pesticide use.
Thanks for that, Janae. Well, here are the facts. The Environmental Protection Agency, also known as the EPA, is responsible for regulating pesticides in the United States. They protect both human health and the environmental health. Their office, the Office of Pesticide Programs, handles the most pesticide issues because they have the authority to determine which pesticides can be used and how they can be used in the United States. They evaluate new pesticides, enforce regulations, and provide support to programs designed to protect pesticide applicators. The European Union also promotes a program entitled Monitoring of Pesticide Residues in Products of Plant Origin. This determines the level of pesticide contamination in the food that people eat. This program has been established in the European Union since 1996. In 1996, pesticides were analyzed in an average of about 9,700 samples of various fruits and vegetables. This program functions to regulate the pesticide residue levels in foods in order to minimize consumers' exposure to the harmful effects of the pesticide intake, to control the correct use of pesticides, and to permit the free circulation of products treated with pesticides as long as they are within the MRL, which is the maximum residue level. Foods that are within this level are considered toxically acceptable. It is when they go beyond this level that they become harmful in foods. Now, Janae, where exactly are pesticides used?
Pesticides are used all over the world in different areas of agriculture. For example, in Japan, Africa, Europe, the United States, and Latin America.
Now you may ask, why are these areas more susceptible to pesticide use? Well, different climatic and agricultural regions have different variations of damage caused by competition of weeds and pests, including insects, bacteria, etc. Many pesticides, including insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides, have become important in the development of agriculture. In both developed and developing countries, there have been large crop losses due to pests and plant diseases. In developed countries like the United States, there have been 10 to 30% crop lossage. But in developing countries, it's even worse. There have been up to 75% of plants lost because of pesticides. So, pesticides are used to help lower these losses. When agricultural practices are efficient, meaning there's enough fertilizer or water, increased pesticide increases the crop's yielded. However, when there are too much pesticides, sometimes the crop's yielded decreases. Now, Katie, tell us, what immediate and long-term effects come from pesticide use, not only in these areas, but in the environment overall?
There are many implications on the environment that pesticides do cause. Groundwater pollution is a worldwide issue. It has been found that at least 143 different pesticides of every major chemical class in more than 43 states have been found in groundwater. Once groundwater is polluted with toxic chemicals, it may take years for the contamination to disappear, and cleanup may also be very costly and complex, if not impossible. This has a detrimental effect on the environment, as water is an essential source for life. Another implication on the environment is the effect on soil fertility. According to social scientist Dr. Elaine Ingham, if we lose both bacteria and fungi, then the soil degrades. Overuse of chemical fertilizers and pesticides have effects on the soil organisms that are similar to human overuse of antibiotics. Therefore, continued use of pesticides on soil will eventually cause the useful bacteria and fungi to die out. The long-term use of pesticides has a negative effect on the environment. Although it's helpful at first, after a few years there won't be enough beneficial soil organisms to hold on to nutrients. Pesticides are also harmful to plants and animals, ranging from soil microorganisms and insects to plants, fish, birds, and other wildlife. Herbicides are highly toxic to fish and are responsible for fish death in waterways near treated fields or buildings. Some herbicides lessen a fish's chance for survival and threaten the population as a whole. Herbicides also affect birds by destroying their habitat.
Now, what about their effect on humans?
By their nature, pesticides are potentially toxic to other organisms, including humans, and they need to be safely disposed of properly. Pesticides have a direct impact on humans in terms of economics with an increase in food production and in terms of human health. The chemicals of pesticides do pose a potential risk to humans and other life forms, resulting in serious side effects. No one is completely protected against exposure to pesticides, and about 1 million deaths per year are caused by pesticide poisoning. People, such as production workers, formulators, sprayers, farmers, mixers, and loaders, are the ones that are most highly affected by pesticides because they're exposed to them the most. In the future, human health can suffer and will suffer from negative effects, such as immune suppression, hormone disruption, diminished intelligence, reproductive abnormalities, and sometimes even cancer. Many of the worst human diseases are transmitted by the bite of an infected arthropod species, such as mosquitoes, ticks, sandflies, and black flies. These are known as vector-borne diseases. There has been an attempt to improve of and prevent the spread of vector-borne diseases with pesticides in order to keep them away from humans. Pesticides function to prevent the spread of these diseases to humans because they will be fatal. 5 main vector-borne diseases have been identified for which pesticides are used. The most common that you all may know is malaria. Back to you, Janae.
Thanks for that, Katie. Now, forms of pesticides have been used dating back to the 16th century. However, scientific studies on the use of chemicals to protect crops wasn't done until the middle of the 19th century. In the time between World War I and World War II, the use of pesticides to protect crops increased. And by the 1940s, synthetic pesticides became very popular, DDT being the first. Throughout the 1950s, there was no sign of concern about the potential health risks that came with the use of pesticides in both consumers and most policymakers. The price of food was lower, and there was no suspected problems or cases where the harmful effects of pesticides were noticed, especially in comparison to the 1920s and 30s, where the forms of arsenic killed people. In 1962, Rachel Carson published a book called Silent Spring, where she highlighted all the potential problems that could arise because of pesticide use. Research then continued over the years as new families of pesticides were produced. But by the 1990s, research activities concentrated on finding new members of existing families which have greater selectivity, but also to have better environmental and toxicological profiles. During this period, there has also been an introduction to newer, user-friendly, and environmentally safe formulations. Over the years, many different pesticides have been banned, including DDT. And more recently, there have been advancements made to genetically engineer crops to produce their own insecticides or exhibit resistance to broad-spectrum herbicide products or pests. And we're back. Okay, well, personally, we think that pesticides are pretty necessary. We wouldn't be able to protect the crops and have as many as we need if we didn't have them. It does provide a benefit that's necessary for life as we know it.
So we do think that the benefits outweigh the harm because there is a level of pesticide use that is toxically acceptable. It's when the use goes over that level that it can become dangerous.
And honestly, we don't think much more should be done to solve this problem.
It's just that there should be more care for the management of pesticide use to make sure that it doesn't go over that level so that everybody is still healthy.
The government agencies need to make sure and manage how much pesticide is being used, but we also still need the pesticides to eat crops.
It's when it becomes out of hand that it becomes a problem.
Exactly.
So, what do you think?
And that's all we have.
Good night.